ABBA Yahuwah, I just want to praise and thank you for this day, my King. Oh, how I want to just exalt your name in this morning, knowing that you are the one that is worthy to be praised. Oh, Father, I just want to thank you that even though the world right now seems to be turning out of control, and everywhere we look, it just seems to be getting worse and worse in the natural. But I praise and I thank you, ABBA Yahuwah, that in the spirit realm, I see your angelic hosts, and I see how they are getting ready for the greatest spectacular event that we are going to witness. And that is going to be the King of Glory that is going to come. He is going to come, and that last trumpet is going to sound, and he is going to come. And I praise and I thank you, ABBA Yahuwah, that it doesn't matter what test and what trial and what destruction and what it is that would go around us. Let us be in that place of where we can lift up our eyes and look to the heavens, knowing that our redemption draws near. And so I praise and I thank you, Abba, my Father, that you are so faithful. You are so faithful, because even when we in ourselves, we can feel so faithless. But it was like something that I read this morning that just put such a smile on my face. If a pandemic like this, just a virus thing can cause such havoc. Imagine what a little seed of a mustard seed of faith can do in this time. And so I thank you, Abba Father, that we are not those that are going to have to look at the pandemic and the next variant and the next thing, but we are those that have faith like the size of a mustard seed, in order to stand in this time and exalt your name and be able to be a light that needs to shine, as we all have choices to make. And we will understand in this Torah portion cause and effect. And we will understand, what are you saying to us in this hour? And we will understand that you have already given us your Son, Messiah, Yeshua, who has gone before us to make a way, to pave the way for us, so that we can now, by the power of your Ruach HaKodesh, walk out the purposes and the plans, the destiny that you have placed before us for this time. And so I praise and I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for this Torah portion, Father. I praise and I thank you for this Torah portion of Eikev, and that we would understand that there's cause and effect for everything. And blessed are we truly going to be if we are going to obey. But if we are going to bow our knee to the world and the world system, there will be a curse that will come upon us. And so I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that we will be those that stand strong in this hour. We will be those that will be your witnesses in order to stand. You have said, you are my witnesses, says Abba Yahuwah. Those who have to stand and know that I am Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. I am Yahuwah. And so I thank you, Abba Father, that you are on your throne, and that no matter what the enemy is doing, we know the end of the book, and we say, the Spirit and the bride say, come, come, Yeshua, come. So I thank you, Abba Father, for this time. I thank you that you will speak to my mind and speak through my lips the very oracles that are going to come from your heart for this time. In Yeshua's name, Amen. Praise Abba Father for His grace, for His love, for His mercy, and for the time that we find ourselves in. You know, the more I see what unfolds around me, the more excited I become. I think people get to the place of where they think, is this woman just stark raving mad? You know, like yesterday someone said to me, oh my goodness, you know, you just make me scared. And I said, no, you have nothing to fear. This is the most exciting time that you have been created in. Can you imagine the excitement of knowing that we are the generation that is going to see the return of the King? Oh my goodness. Just that thought is enough to be able to get me to get so excited that where everybody else is getting excited about gold medals going around because it's the Olympics and everybody's getting excited about what's going on because of the variants and the deaths and the everything else. Can we just get excited about our Messiah? Can we just get excited because we are drawing nearer and nearer to the return of our King? What are our eyes on? What are we focusing on? What is the hype all about? Well, as for me, my hype is about my King. Because the more I look and see how Abba puts these Torah portions together, the more He unfolds these Torah portions for us to be able to understand what He's doing, the more excited I become, because the more I understand that He's on His throne and that He is speaking. And for those who have ears to hear, let them hear what the Ruach is saying to the people in this hour. Because truly, He has already, how many thousands of years ago, wrote this Torah portion, written the Torah for us as a foundation in order for us to be able to, in this hour, look into these scriptures and understand what is He saying to us in this time. So as we're going to look at Deuteronomy, as we're going to pick up from where we left off from Deuteronomy chapter 7 from verses 12, and if we just read, okay, so we are going to look at this Torah portion to understand what it is that the Father wants to show us in this Torah portion of Eikev. And so we are going to look as it starts in Deuteronomy chapter 7 in verses 12. Okay, so it says, and it shall be, because you hear these right rulings and shall guard and do them, that Yahuwah your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the loving commitment which He swore to your fathers. Now, that word Eikev means because, but there is a lot more to the word because. So if we just look at it and it says because, okay, so because you are keeping my right rulings, but that word is consequence. So that word because, it's the consequence. So when there is a consequence, there's consequences to whether there is good or there is consequences to whether there is evil. So we need to understand that the word Eikev is the word for consequences. It's the word for gain. It's the word for reward. So you're going to be rewarded whether you do good, or you're going to be rewarded whether you do bad. So we need to understand that there's consequences to everything that happens in our lives. I mean, like we will say to our children, this is the consequence of what you have disobeyed. Because you disobeyed, you are going to get a hiding. And so these are the consequences. And so we need to understand that that word for Eikev is the word that means consequence. But it's also the word that if you take the root word of it, is coming from akav, and that root word means supplant, means circumvent, but it means take by the heel. And then if you look at a deeper root word of Eikev, and that is also means footprint. And I found that to be so beautiful. That word, footprint. So the root word of Eikev can also come from a word which is called footprint, which is heel, which is actually what Yaakov's name was supplanter. He was supplanter because he took by the heel. He took his brother by the heel. So Eikev really comes, the word Jacob, Yaakov, comes from Eikev. But we need to understand that there is a root word for it as well, which is footprint. And this was so beautiful for me because when I looked at that word footprint, I thought to myself, oh Father, you give us a footprint. And if we walk in your footprints, then we know that there is a blessing when we walk in the footprint of that which you have placed for us. So are we going to walk in our own footprints, in our own way, or are we going to be able to walk in the footprint that He has put there for us from the beginning? There is a footprint that we are to walk in, that He's already placed there for us. And man, if I look at this book of Deuteronomy, like I said, every time I look at the book of Deuteronomy, I say to myself, my Father, I don't understand. How did I miss this all those years before? To understand that how many times do you say, if you will obey, if you will just obey, if you will walk in my commands, if you keep my statutes, if you walk in my ordinances, if you will just obey my ways, if you will love me, if you will fear me, if you will just keep my word, if you will keep my ways. And how many times is continuing to tell us the same thing? And yet at the end of the day, we will still want to walk in our own footprints. And we want to still put the footprint of our own lives and walk in our own paths and put our own paths before us and walk in our own way. And yet at the end of the day, how amazing is it that He has put His footprint? And so if we walk in His footprint, there's no consequences. And if we walk in His footprint, there is gain and reward. But if we're going to walk in our own footprint, then we need to understand that there is going to be a consequence of destruction that's going to come our way. And so today we are going to look at this Torah portion as I love this Torah portion of Deuteronomy chapter 8 because Father really opened up Deuteronomy chapter 8 to me in terms of understanding. Deuteronomy chapter 8 is when He really opens up to the Israelites to make them understand what was their wilderness experience about. What was He trying to show them in the wilderness? What was it that He was requiring of them in the wilderness? And so let us continue to read from Deuteronomy chapter 7. Let us go to chapter 13, because in chapter 13 I picked up something there that is so beautiful, because let's just go back to verse 12 again, and it says, and it shall be, because you hear these right rulings. So you see, it shall be, if you walk in the footprint of these right rulings, is basically what he's saying. If you are going to be able to walk in the footprint of hearing these right rulings, and shall guard to do them, that Yahuwah, your Elohim, shall guard with you the covenant and the loving commitment which He swore to your fathers. Now, this is what we need to understand. You know, this isn't just about a bunch of commands. And this is what we need to understand. You know what? For people that are new and people that are still trying to understand and coming onto this path, some people will listen to me speaking like even last week, and then it will be a case of them saying, well, you know what, she wants to just bring us back into the laws, and we need to come back into the laws. And, you know, it makes it sound like when we're walking through these Torah portions that it's about returning back to a law. But yeah, you need to understand what this is all about. And this is what we need to understand, ABBA Yahuwah's heart. And this is ABBA Yahuwah's heart where he says, hear these right rulings and shall guard them. So because you hear these right rulings and shall guard and do them, that Yahuwah your Lord shall guard you with the covenant and the loving commitment which he swore to your fathers. So everything about his ordinances, about his commands, has to do with covenant. And if only we would understand where we find ourselves at the moment is that ABBA Yahuwah is not interested, and this is what I woke up to this morning, as I was waking up this morning, and this is what he was saying. My children need to understand that this is not about a bunch of laws. It's not about a bunch of laws that is to be able to get them to keep laws of the flesh. But this is about covenant. This is about a love relationship that I have with them. And my Son has come to pave the way so that now, out of love, he has come to show you the way so that it is now not a burden. My ordinances is not a burden. It's my footprint that I walk out with you through my Son who's already died for you, who has resurrected, who gives you my Spirit so that you may walk in my footprints. And this was just so powerful because people are wanting to stand up against people to say, why are you returning back to the law of the Jews? And why are you doing the things of the Jews? This has nothing to do with the laws of the Jews. This has everything to do with Abba Father and his covenant that he has made with a people that he has set aside, who is the people of Israel. And how gracious is he that he gave us his Son to pave the way, to now make a way so that we too may be grafted in to that covenant that was made from the beginning. When we start in the book of Genesis, we see that everything about our Father has to do with covenant. He never wanted a people that were to obey him out of a religious sense of duty. He never wanted people that were to have to obey him because they have to. He wanted people to obey him because they love him, because they want to. Because this is everything about a love relationship between a creator and his creation that he created for himself. To dwell with him, to sup with him, to dine with him, to love on him. This is what it's all about. How have we got it so wrong? And this is now when I have come to understand that if we do not if we do not portray this in the right way, and if we do not portray Abba Yahuwah's heart in the right way, people will rebel against a message that is his footprint for our lives, because it has everything to do with his covenant. He's wanting to betroth a people to him. He's given us a ketubah on Mount Sinai and said, this is my ketubah. This is my set of rules that if you are to be, this is like my marriage contract. This is the contract that I'm giving you, people, so that you may show me that you love me. So do I do this because I have to? Or do I do this because I love him? Because I can tell you now, if you do this because you have to, you are not going to stand in the days ahead, because you will fall one way or the other. If the core purpose of you wanting to come back to Torah if the core purpose of it is not because you are in love with the creator of the universe, the one who's given you breath in your body, and if you do not have a love relationship with him, then you are not going to stand, because you will bow down to that whom you will serve. So you will either serve yourself and serve this world, or you will serve him. You will only lay your life down for the one whom you truly love. And if you don't truly love him, you will not lay down your life for him. And that is what we need to understand. And this is what the Father is in such a desperate way. As I read through the pages of this Deuteronomy, I hear the Father's desperation. And I hear the Father's desperation to a people right now, crying out to a people and saying, do you not understand? This is the footprint that I have, that I've put in place for you to walk in. And if you walk it my way, I am going to love on you. And I am going to protect you. And I am going to destroy your enemies. And I am going to lift you up. And you are going to enter my promised land. And even though it's going to come with a few hardships and trials and tests, but you will be my people who will reign and rule with my Son. But if you are going to rebel, you are going to self-destruct. That is the message. That's what we need to understand. And that is why, look at what he tells us in Deuteronomy 13. In Deuteronomy 13, it's so beautiful because he gives us 10 promises. 10 promises in one verse. In one verse, he gives us 10 promises. So he says, and shall love you. So he promises to love us. And bless you. He promises to bless you and to increase you. And shall bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your cattle and the offspring of your flock in the land of which he swore to your fathers to give you. So how amazing is this? He shall love you. He shall bless you. He shall increase the fruit of your womb. He shall bless the fruit of your land. He shall bless your grain, your oil. He shall increase your cattle and the offspring of your flock, and bless you in the land which he swore to your fathers. 10 promises. You know, Father's promises are so much more than what there is in the curse if we just obey. But why is it so difficult for mankind? The only reason why it's difficult for mankind is because mankind loves themselves. They love themselves. And when you love yourself more than you love anything else, you become your own God and you serve yourself. And people do not understand that their biggest idol that they serve is themselves. They become the king of their castle. And that is the very nature of Hasatan. Hasatan wanted to raise himself up. Hasatan wanted to be the one that was in charge. Hasatan wants you to serve him. And so we need to understand that the Father has put before us promises. And this is the cause and effect that we are going to see. This is the consequences that are before us of obedience and consequences of disobedience. And so he says, blessed are you above all peoples. There is not going to be a barren man or a barren woman among you or among your livestock. Wow. And Yahuwah shall turn away from you all the sickness and put on you none of the evil diseases of Mitzrayim, which you have known, but he shall put them on all those who hate you. So when we are going to see these people that are going to fall by the wayside with the greater diseases of what's coming, this is just the scratching. This is just the beginning of what's really going to come. This is only the beginning. This is just the tip of the iceberg that's still got to come. This is just the test. This has been the test that they have placed there to see how would the herd of the people behave. Let's just test them. Let's see how our herd is going to behave. And then we'll know how deeper we can go and how much further we can go. So mankind is in one huge test. And this is what we need to understand. And while we are in a test, ABBA Yahuwah himself is testing us in this time. ABBA Yahuwah himself is looking at our hearts, because that's what he was doing to the Israelites in the wilderness. He was testing the Israelites in the wilderness. And so we look and we see in Deuteronomy 16, he says, "And you shall consume all the people whom Yahuwah is delivering over to you. Your eye shall not pardon them, and do not serve their mighty ones, for there is a snare." That is a snare to you. So what is going to become a snare to us in the days ahead of us? The snare is going to be, what are we going to bow down to? Are we going to bow down to the systems of this world? Are we going to bow down to the things of this world? Are we going to bow down to what's being offered to us in this world to be able to save our lives, to be able to save our family, to be able to save our possessions, to be able to go back to business as usual and life as usual? What are we going to bow down to? Because we are going to look at this in a deep way today. And so in verses 18 to 21, he says, "Do not be afraid of them. Remember what Yahuwah your Lord did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim." Why are we fearing what is going on? Why are we fearing the reports that is going on? Why are we fearing an alpha variant, a beta variant, a delta variant? Oh my goodness. They are just keep putting their things out there to be able to put more airwaves out there, because the alpha and the beta and the delta is all to do with waves, airwaves. It's all to do with sound waves. And let us send the sound waves to them, and let's see how they respond. So the alpha one didn't get them, and maybe the beta one didn't get them. Maybe now the delta one will get them. What's next? And this is what I'm saying. The sound waves are coming. And are we turning to the sound wave of what the enemy is wanting to throw at us? Or are we just worshipping our King and allowing ourselves to stay in the sound wave of heaven? What sound wave are you flowing with? Are you flowing with the sound wave of the 444 frequency that's coming from heaven, that's connecting you to the sound of the angelic hosts of heaven? Are you being taken by the sound waves of what the earth is sounding right now to bring fear and destruction? "And the great trials which your eyes saw, and signs and wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm by which Yahuwah your Lord brought you out. Yahuwah your Lord does so to all the people of whom you are afraid." Why should we fear this? Yahuwah our Elohim is going to be able to stretch out his hand, and he will protect us, and he will keep us, and he will guard us, and he will shut us in the time when it's needed, to shut us in the ark when it gets really bad. "And Yahuwah your Elohim also sends the hornet amongst them, until those who are left, who hide themselves from you, are destroyed." So the hornet is the wasp. It's the one that's going to come and sting. So what wasp is stinging right now? What hornet and wasp is stinging the people right now? Do not be succumb to the wasp of the sting that's going to bring the greatest destruction upon mankind, because there is a sting that is wanting to sting us right now, that is wanting to vex us. Do you understand? Hear what I'm saying. It's a vex, it's a spell, and it comes from that which is the VAX. Do you understand? And it's a vex. A vex is a spell. Do not come under the spell of the enemy. Do not come under his spell. Do not come under the spell of the sorcerer that has led the whole world into sorcery. Do not come under the spell of the hornet sting that is going to kill mankind in this time, because they have allowed themselves to be taken out by a hornet sting. Do not be afraid of them, for Yahuwah, the great and awesome owl, is in your midst. There you go. Who is in our midst? ABBA Yahuwah himself. And he's given us the captain of the army of hosts, Yahushua HaMashiach, who is in our midst. And he's given us his authority and his power for us to stand strong, mighty in battle. Because we do not stand of ourselves. We stand in his might and in his power, because we will understand this in this Torah portion. It's his righteousness. All we need to do is Shema, hear and obey. And if we hear and obey, then we walk in the footprints of the commander of the chief in charge, the Yahuwah Tsabaot, the one who has already gone before us, the one who's already conquered the battle. The battle has already been won. In the spirit, it's already won. It's still going to have to come in the physical. So don't be worried about what you see going on around you. Don't let that disturb you. Verses 25 to 26 says, the carved images of their mighty ones you are to burn with fire. Do not covet the silver or the gold that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, lest you be snared by it, for it is an abomination to Yahuwah your Elohim. So do you understand? This evil system has got this silver and gold to be able to offer you, when they are not going to do what they can do through this hornet sting that they want to bring our way, through the sting that they want to bring their way. Then there's going to be a world system of a monetary system where they're going to control everything, where there's going to be a currency that you are going to have to succumb to. So what I'm saying is, do not crave what this world has to give you. If you're going to love this world, you are going to lose everything if you're going to love this world, because this world is under the sway of the devil. And so we need to understand that the Father has told us that we have these things going on in the world right now. We have giants. We have many things that are wanting to take us out, but we are not to allow the things of the world to be able to overcome us. We have to understand that we've been given the power and the authority to overcome. To overcome the things that want to overcome us. So we are going to look in great detail into Deuteronomy chapter 8, because we are going to have to understand. Deuteronomy chapter 8 is what the Father has written for us to understand our wilderness, for us to understand what is it that the Father has already done in the wilderness with the Israelites as an example for us, and what has the Father done with Yahushua in the wilderness as the greater example for us. So we are going to look. We are going to be between Deuteronomy chapter 8 and we are going to be between Matthew chapter 4. So that is where we're going to go between, for us to understand what it is that the Father is wanting to show us in our wilderness experience, because no servant is greater than his master. No servant. So if Yahuwah went to a wilderness, so will we go to a wilderness. If he sent his beloved people, Israel, into a wilderness, so will he send us into a wilderness. And that is why we are in a wilderness. We've come out of Egypt. We are not in Egypt because we have been saved, we have been delivered, we have been set free, but we are in our wilderness experience, and we are looking forward to entering into our promised land. And praise the Father, that promised land is becoming brighter and brighter because we're getting closer and closer to the promised land. It's like in the horizon already. It is so close. But how are we going to behave in order for us to be able to come into our promised land? So let's start with Deuteronomy chapter 8 from verse 1. God to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and shall increase and go in, and shall possess the land of which Yahuwah swore to your fathers. So there you go. He's telling us the very first thing, God to do every command. So that which he commands, we are to guard and we are to do, so that we may live and we will increase. Now listen, verse 2, and you shall remember that Yahuwah your Lord led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness. Okay, so some of us maybe have been saved even for 40 years. Some of us, like myself, have been saved 21 years. However the number of years is that you've been saved, you are in your wilderness. And we have been going through a wilderness. And as much as we want to believe that we are in our promised land, the promised land is in sight. And our promised land is coming. And we are not to lose sight of our promised land. But we are still very much in a wilderness. We are still very much being equipped in our wilderness. We have not arrived. We are far from arrived. Many of us think we have arrived. Just when I think that I'm close to arriving, I get another slap just to bring me back, to make me understand. You arrived nowhere, my girl. Just stay where you are right now. And look at what he says, to humble you. So why does he take us into the wilderness? He takes us into the wilderness to humble us. That word humble in the Hebrew is the word anah. Anah. And what is that word humble? To afflict, to oppress, to be afflicted, be bowed down, to become low, to be downcast, to be humiliated. So why do we go through all these things? I mean, just this morning, just last night, I was reading a prophetic word that was given to me by my spiritual mother when I was in Israel in 2019. And she said, the Father has taken you through many things because he has brought you to a place of humility. He has humbled you. And when we think humble, we think, that I can be so low. It's not just being low. You have been afflicted. You have gone through affliction. You have been oppressed. You have gone through your oil press. You have been pressed on every side. Because you cannot have an anointing without having to go through an oil press. So you must understand that oil press brings affliction. That oil press will bring oppression. It brings you to oppression. It afflicts you and helps you to bow lower. Because you see, you need to get off your throne and you need to understand that you bow to the King and you bow to his way. And even that which you think you cannot do, and even that which you will stand and say, I can't do this, Abba. Yet, like Yahuwah in his Garden of Gethsemane, in his oil press, what did he say? Not my will, but your will be done. So what is the oil press about? The oil press allows you to be able to get to that place of where you need to humble and say, not my will, but your will be done. Which means it's not your prayer. Which means it's not you resisting him through your prayers. It means allowing him to be able to take you through the process, even when you squirm like the worm, and even when it hurts, and even when you want to run away, like myself, the beginning of this year, I was really at a place of the oil press being at its hardest, pressing, and I said, I can't take this anymore. Can I run now, Father? Can I run now? I just want to run. I can't take this another day. And he said, my child, you need to go a little bit lower. You need to humble a little bit more. You need to break a little bit more under my correction that I want to bring in your life. You're going to be humiliated. You're going to go through your oil press. But I need you to go through this so that I can raise you up. Because you see, a tree must be pruned. And it's got to go through its pruning process. If it doesn't get pruned, it doesn't produce the good fruit. If you have trees that don't get pruned, the fruit of it is no good. You have to allow the tree to be pruned. But how many of us resist his process? Because we've learned to be so spiritually immature by praying all our little hardships away. And we do not know how to discern when the Father is trying to bring us to the end of ourselves, because we have not been taught that we are to die to our flesh man. So the oil press is hard, and it brings much humiliation, especially in times when Father allows you to be humiliated and broken down. So just when you think you want to maybe raise yourself up, he will allow you to go a little bit lower. And then he proves you. So he says, he came to humble you and to prove you. Now what is that word prove? That word prove is nasa, nosa. And what is that? To test, to try, to prove, to put you to the test, to tempt and to try. So we go through all of this so that he can expose our hearts. So what does he do? Let's see what he does. To prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. So do you see? If he's put you in a place and he's told you that this is where he wants you to be, and he's told you that this is what he wants you to do, and at the end of the day, you go through the oil press, and you do not want this, and you start to pray it away, then you will not be able to have exposed to you what is in your heart, and how are you going to be able to, at the end of the day, heal the mind, the will, and the emotions, because that's what the heart is. You see, the heart, the lev, is the mind, the will, and the emotions. And the Father tests you, and the Father puts you through these tests, and the Father humbles you, and the Father puts you through affliction, and the Father allows you to be oppressed, so that you can come to the other side of understanding that he allows you to go through all of this, to reveal to you what is in your heart, to reveal to you that you say you love him, that you say you will obey him, but when you are in the fiery furnace, you show otherwise. You will get maybe angry, you will maybe get fearful, you will want to run away, you will go through all these things where people will maybe say things up against you, and then you want to be able to not forgive them, and you want to stay in that place of your self-righteous place. What are you doing? All of these things are the things that will be exposed to you when you put in your oil press of being humbled, and when he's going to prove you in your testing time. And this is where we are right now. Mankind is being tested. There is enough information out there for people to understand what's been given to them. And if they still want to bow their knee, they will get what is going to come their way. Because the Father puts his footprint. His footprint is in our DNA. His footprint is within us. He has put his footprint of his code encoded in our very DNA. Is the footprint of his code, of his name. Yod Hey Vav Hey. And what are we going to do? We're going to bow down to a system. So here we see Father is going to have to put us through all of this for us to understand one thing, and that is He's going to reveal to us if we are going to obey His commands. So let us see what is the first test that's going to come their way. Their very first test that came their way was He humbled you and let you suffer hunger. Okay. What is most probably going to come ahead of us? The day that we might not be able to buy food from the shops, if we do not have a sting that's going to be given to us, that wants to be given to us, if we're not going to bow down to this thing, will we maybe go through a little bit of hunger? So maybe there will not be food. Maybe we will not have as much food as what we had before. Are we going to bow down to maybe when there is no food? Are we going to bow down to maybe going to eat food that we're not supposed to eat? Because, well, it's just food, so I've got to survive. So let me eat it, even though it's not clean. It doesn't matter, because I have to survive. You see, these are the things that are going to come our way. We need to understand something. We have got a lot of trials and tests coming our way. And we need to understand that we are just in the beginning. That's why I said we haven't even scratched the surface of what's really coming. And that's why today we need to understand Messiah Yeshua has already gone through these tests. So we look and we see the very first test that the Israelites had to go through in the wilderness was the test of having to be able to go through hunger. So He said He humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. So, what is going to be more important to you in the days ahead? The word of the Father and that which He has spoken and that which He's wanting of your life? Or the fact that you are going to want to save your life by maybe bowing down to, like let's just take Daniel when he went into the palace. The food that was being offered to him was unclean food, and he was an Israelite boy. And how was he going to overcome this? But he had to get to the place of where he had to turn around and say, well, you know what, we'll just do a fast. We'll just fast. We're going to fast. Let's just go and say to the eunuchs, listen, please let us fast. Can we be allowed to fast? We do not want to drink the king's wine. We do not want to eat the king's food. We will fast. So what are we going to do when we put to the test? Are we going to assimilate into the world system, or are we going to be set apart from the world system? Because you see, Daniel could either have assimilated, or he was going to be able to stand out. And just like him, we are in exactly the same time. So now let's go look at Matthew chapter 4, so that we see. And we start in Matthew chapter 4 from verses 1. Then Joshua was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. And after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So you see, who was bringing him this testing in the wilderness? The devil was going to test Joshua. Because Joshua is no different to what we are, in the sense of where the same Hasatan that was tempting Joshua is the same Hasatan that's going to come our way. And that is going to be able to present itself in our flesh nature. And so, here we see, and it says, and the trier came and said to him, so after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So you see, what was the test? He was hungry. So the very first test that Joshua undergoes in the wilderness is exactly the same test that the Israelites underwent in the wilderness, which was hunger. And he says, and the trier came to him and said, if you are the son of Yahuwah, command these stones to become bread. Command these stones become bread. And he answering said, It has been written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. So we best remember these words in the days ahead. What is going to be more important? Being obedient to ABBA Yahuwah and the words that have come from his mouth? Or the fact that we are going to be hungry and we are going to want to get food? Who are we going to obey? And so this is the very first test that we see. So at the end of the day, we need to understand in the days ahead, there's going to be opportunity for us to compromise his commands. There's going to be opportunity for us to be able to bow down to a system of this world. In maybe if it means that there is no food, we're going to have to succumb to eat things that's maybe going to be not quite what the Father would want us to eat. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to be able to trust the Father that he's the one who's going to sustain us no matter what? So now we go look at Deuteronomy chapter 8. So let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 8 from verses 4. Your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Thus you shall know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yahuwah your Lord disciplines you. So we need to understand that everything of what the Father takes us through, and that is why people, if you are under a trial right now, and you're under a test right now, and you are being squeezed, and you are being pressed, and you are being humbled, and you are being proved, you must embrace this. Embrace this with everything that you have, because you must understand. If you do not learn these tests in the wilderness where we are right now, if we do not learn these tests while it's still going well with us right now, how will we overcome the bigger tests? Remember, when you have been faithful in little things, much more can be given to you. But if we don't even learn to be faithful in the little tests, how are we going to overcome the big ones? Do you understand? These are the things that we need to understand. He disciplines those whom he loves. He's going to put us through these tests. He's going to put us through this. Therefore, you shall guard the commands of Yahuwah your Lord, to walk in his ways, to fear him. Okay, so what is the second test? The second test is that we must learn to fear him above anything else. So what will we do? Will we want our way? Will we demand and command our way? Or will we fear him? Do we have respect and honor for him? So the most important thing that we see here is he sustains us. Look what he says, your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years, because he sustained you while you were in the wilderness. He sustains us. No matter what we're going to go through, he is going to sustain us. But when the going gets tough, then the tough want to get going. When all of a sudden those things that we are so accustomed to, let us remember the Meribah, let us remember the Israelites in the wilderness when it came to Meribah. What did they do? There's no water. And then we want to be able to have, we want the garlic, and we want the leeks, and we want all these delicacies, and we want meat. And so we start to demand and command. Do we fear him? That you will fear him. That word fear is the word yareh, which is to be afraid, to stand in awe of, to honor, to respect. Do we respect him that he knows best? Do we honor him? Are we dreadful of him? Do we have a reverence with a Yah reverence, a Yah fear for him, that we will be afraid to demand and command and have our way? He will sustain us. We might not have much, but we are to know that he disciplines us. But yet, are we going to be arrogant? Are we going to demand? Are we going to command? Are we going to shove his word in his face and demand and command from him, like they were demanding and commanding their quail, and the meat was still between their teeth, and how many of them died? Do we respect him? Do we truly fear him? Because if we look and see now, when Yahuwah gets put to the test of being spectacular, you see, so then there comes a time that, we become so arrogant in ourselves. We become so arrogant in even knowing our scripture that we want to demand and command now all of a sudden, even the creator of heaven, that he must jump to our commands. So let's look and see what it says in Matthew chapter 4 from verses 5 and 7. So in Matthew chapter 4, the devil took him up into a set-apart city, set him on the edge of the set-apart place, and said to him, "If you are the son of Yahuwah, throw yourself down, for it has been written, he shall command his messengers concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot against a stone." And Yahuwah said to him, "It has also been written, you shall not try Yahuwah your Elohah." So this be a warning to us today. We are to be very, very careful. You know what? They tried him in Meribah. In Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 to 4, they tried him in Meribah. They griped, they moaned, they complained. And they didn't want to, they were now griping, moaning, complaining. They wanted water, they wanted food. It was all of this. And we see that we are not to question the work of his hands. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. So when he allows us to go through a process, do we start to demand and command to have our way? Or do we surrender? Remember what happened with Job's wife. When Job was going through a tremendous trial, a tremendous test that he was being put to, what did Job's wife say? "Curse ABBA Yahuwah and die." We can't say that we have faith and then quote Psalm 91 and do all of this, yet we pray out of fear. What are we going to do when the time presents itself? Oh, wait a second, let's see what people are doing. No. I'm going to bow down to this sting thing. I'm going to bow down to this V thing. I'm going to bow down to it. And then I'm going to say, but ABBA Yahuwah is going to protect me. Oh, nothing is going to happen to me. I have his blood, and his blood is going to protect me, and his blood flows through my veins. Are you not putting him to the test? Just like Hasatan was doing with Yahuwah. Well, he could have thrown himself down from that mountain, couldn't he? Oh, go throw yourself down from the mountain. The angels are going to catch you. If you are the son of the living Yah, the angels will catch you. Nothing is going to happen to you. Just throw yourself down. Just do it now. Go take your V thing. And don't worry. You know what? Don't worry. They will tell you. The pastors will tell you, and these people will tell you, no, you are a child of the living Yah. You have a covenant with him. He's going to protect you. Nothing is going to happen to you. Are you putting him to the test? What are you doing? Not even Yahuwah jumped from that high place when the enemy told him to do it, because this was a test. This is a test, people. You are being tested to see, will you obey? Will you obey? Will you bow your knee? Will you fear, or will you have faith? What will you do? Are you wanting to save your life? You know that this thing is not normal. You know that now they're even saying, oh my goodness, if you don't take this, you're not going to have the coverage of your medical aid that you should have. And they're going to up the medical aid, and they're just squeezing, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Everywhere we look, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. Look at where we were a year ago, and look at where we are now. A year ago, this thing wasn't even on the scene. Yet I have seen, I had to laugh. I think it was in this last week. I saw a box. Someone took a photo of this V-thing box. And the the date on there was the date of issued 2018. I thought, how interesting. There's so much out there that keeps showing us that this is all a facade, that this is part of a scheme and a plan, and this is how the enemy comes. He wants to vex us into his spell. And what are we doing? Falling, just like he was trying to make Yahuwah fall in these tests. And so Yahuwah tells him, you shall not put ABBA Yahuwah to the test. What are we doing? Are we going to obey ABBA Yahuwah? Are we going to fear ABBA Yahuwah? Or are we going to fear that's what's going on around us at the moment? And so we need to understand he will protect us if we are going to be faithful to him. Then no harm will befall us. But if we are going to open up ourselves, what is going to happen? This is what this Torah portion is about. Consequences. We will face the consequences of our actions. Walk in your own footprint and the footprint of the world, or walk in the footprint of your Father. Whose footprint are you going to walk in? So let's continue to read from verse 7, and we'll read from verses 7 to verse 20. And it says, for Yahuwah your Elohim is bringing you, from Deuteronomy chapter 7, for Yahuwah your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, and a land of olive oil and honey and dates. The honey is made out of the dates. And a land in which you eat bread without scarcity, in which you do not lack at all. My goodness, doesn't matter what we're going to lack now. We are going to more than be compensated for it. A land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you dig copper. And you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall bless Yahuwah your Lord for the good land which he has given you. Be on guard, lest you forget Yahuwah. See, this is what we need to understand. This is the third test. The third test is the test of being able to understand, what are we going to bow down to? Are we going to bow down to the systems? Are we going to be able to try to save our lives? What are we going to do? Be on guard lest you forget Yahuwah, your Elohim, by not guarding his commands and his right rulings and his laws, which I command you today. So there is the warning. If you are not going to obey him, if you are not going to obey his commands, lest you eat and shall be satisfied, and build lovely houses and shall dwell in them. So you see, all the riches that this world is giving us, we're going to live in our wonderful houses. He's given us all the stuff, but at the end of the day, he still wants you to be able to obey him above all the stuff that he's maybe even given you. Maybe he's given you the houses and given you the cars and given you the job and given you the riches and given you everything. And there's coming a day that you're going to have to let go of it all for you to obey him and follow him. Are you going to be able to do that? Because you see, that's what's going to be presented. Yahuwah was presented the whole world. He's going to give you all of this, and he's going to say, well, if you're going to bow down to all of this, you're going to end up losing it all in the end. So, he says, your herds and your flocks increase, and your silver and your gold are increased, and all that you have is increased, that your heart then becomes lifted up. And you forget Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the house of bondage, and led you through that great and awesome wilderness. Fiery serpents, scorpions, and thirst. Remember, what is the scorpions? You see, he's going to put us through all of this. The scorpions are there, the things are there, and we are going to have to stay faithful to him. We are going to have to trust him. We are going to have to put our trust and our faith only in him, not in the things that are going to go on around us. So, he turns around and says, that your heart does not become lifted up and you forget Yahuwah, who led you through the great and awesome wilderness, all these fiery serpents, all these things, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you and to try you. So you see, you've been humbled. He's wanted to humble you. He's tried you to do you good in the end. So it's for your good that he's had to put you through all of this. It's for your good, and that's what you need to understand. You then shall say in your heart, my power, my strength, my hand have made for me this wealth. Okay, so now it's you have established your wealth, and you've established yourself, and you've got all this stuff, and even though you've acknowledged the Father that's given it to you, but are you willing to walk away from it? Are you willing to let it all go? But you shall remember Yahuwah your Lua, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish His covenant, which He swore to your fathers, as it is today. And it shall be, if you by any means forget Yahuwah your Lua, and follow other mighty ones, and serve them. So you see, what are we going to bow down to? And bow yourselves to them. I have warned you this day, that you shall certainly perish. There, He has warned us this day. There's the consequences. Are you going to obey Him? Or are you going to bow down to this worldly system to save your possessions and your wealth and your things? What are you going to do? Like the nations which Yahuwah is destroying before you, so you are to perish because you did not obey the voice of Yahuwah your Lua. So let us go and look and see the third test, because Yeshua has to overcome the test, because we have to overcome this test. And so let's go look at Matthew chapter 4 for us to understand the last test. And so Matthew chapter 4, we're going to look at from verses 8 to 11. And let's see what he says. Again the devil took him up on a very high mountain, and showed him all the reigns of the world and their esteem, and said to him, all these I shall give you, if you shall fall down and worship me. Then Yahuwah said to him, go, Hasatan, for it has been written, you shall worship Yahuwah your Lua, and Him alone you shall serve. Who are we going to worship? Who are we going to bow down to? Who are we going to fear? Who are we going to stay faithful to? This is the question that we need to ask, because this is what is going to present itself. So we need to understand this is the test that we are going to have to see. This is the test that is going to come our way, that we are going to have to walk away when the time comes that if we do not bow down to this spell of this vex, of this thing that has been presented to us, that the whole world is under the sway of it. Let's go look and see. Let's just quickly go look and see, so that we may understand what the whole world is under the sway of. Let's just quickly go to Revelation 18:23, so that we do not forget what is before us, because you need to understand what is presenting itself before you. And the light of the lamp shall not shine. And Revelation 18:23, and the light of the lamp shall not shine in you any more at all, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you any more at all. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth. The merchants are the wealthy ones of the earth, chasing after the silver and the gold. For by your drug sorcery, all the nations were led astray. By your drug sorcery, by your pharmakia that has been given, by your administering drugs, your poisoning, your magical arts, your seduction of idolatry, your witchcraft, your magical remedies, your sorcerer, a druggist, a pharmacist, a poisoner. For the one who's wanting to poison our system, the whole world is under the sway of this drug sorcery, of this pharmakia, of this drug thing that is wanting to be given to us. And the whole world is right now under the sway of that thing. This is where we are right now. This is what is presented to us right now. And here we are confronting this test. Who are you going to worship? Are you going to worship this golden calf? Are you going to worship yourself to save your life? And you are on the throne because you want to save your life by having to take this thing. Or are you going to worship ABBA Yahuwah and Him alone? So we need to understand This is where we are right now. This is what is being presented to us right now. What are we going to do when we will no longer buy or sell, where we will no longer work, where we will no longer be able to support ourselves, where we will no longer be able to sustain ourselves with, be able to keep our cars because it's going to be repossessed, because we will not be able to afford them, when we will no longer be able to live in our houses, because they're going to be repossessed if we are not going to work. How are we going to sustain ourselves? What are you going to bow down to them? So this is the third test that's going to come. You see, the tests get a little bit worse as they go along. Now it's your possessions are going to be taken away from you. Everything's going to be taken away from you. When you can no longer sustain yourself, you can no longer support yourself, because if you are not going to be able to bow down to this thing, then you are not going to be able to support yourself. Like already now, the teachers are being told that if you do not take this thing, you will not be able to work. So now how many people are going to lose their jobs? If you're going to look and see what's going on in France, if you're going to look and see what's going on in the Philippines, if you're going to look and see what's going on in Israel, now they're going to have to walk around with green passports. They're going to have to walk around with certain things that is going to be able to get them to bow down to the system so that they can be sustained. Who's going to sustain you? Who are you going to bow down to in the days ahead? Because there's stages. You might overcome the first test, the second test will present itself, until the third test presents itself. And Yaz Hasatan giving Yahuwah the world and saying, if you just bow down to me, you can have all of this. What are they saying to you? Look at what they're saying to you. If you just take this thing, you can travel. You can visit your family. You can have life as normal. You can have your job again. You can wear no masks. You can do all these wonderful things. You can have all your freedom again. Oh my goodness. You can have the world. Let's see what it says in 1 John 5:19. It says, we know that we are of Yahuwah, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. So the whole world is under the sway of the wicked one. What are we going to do? This is what we need to understand. Yahuwah was given the easy way. He was given the easy way out. He was said, well, if you just bow down to me now, the devil was saying, just bow down to me now. This is the drug sorcery, the very witchcraft that you are being given to bow down to, the sorcery thing that's been offered to you that you can bow down to, and we're going to give you back your life. Do you see Hasatan standing before our Messiah saying, bow down to me. You don't need to go the path of the cross. You don't need to go the path of the stake. You don't need to die to your flesh. You don't need to die to your mind, your will, and your emotions. You don't need to go to a Gethsemane. Let me just give it to you now. Let me give you everything now. I've got the whole world is under my control at the moment. I'll give it all to you. Just bow down to me now. Do you see what's being presented to you? Are people even aware of what they are in for? Do people even understand that they are in the biggest test of their lives? They're being weighed in the scales, and for the sake of trying to save their lives and go back to business as normal, what are they going to bow down to? This evil system. So we have choices to make, and this is what we need to understand. The consequences of our choices are going to cost us. Whose footprint are we going to walk in? Are we going to allow the footprint of the Father to be able to be embedded in our DNA? Are we going to allow a serpent seed to overtake us? What are we going to do? Let's look now at Deuteronomy chapter 9. As we start to look and see. Look what he says in Deuteronomy chapter 9. Hear, O Israel, you are passing over the Jordan. Shema, Israel. Shema. Hear and obey. Understand what I'm trying to say to you. You need to listen and you need to obey. You are passing over the Jordan today to go into dispossessed nations, greater and stronger than yourselves. Cities great, walled up to the heavens. A people great and tall, and descendants of the Anakim, whom you know, and of whom you heard it said, who does stand before the descendants of the Anak? You know what? These giants are going to present themselves. These giants are going to be there. These giants of fear and death are going to present themselves. The giants of war and rumors of war. The giants of pestilence and disease are going to present themselves. Are we going to bow down to them and be fearful of them? Or are we going to stand and have faith in the one who is the creator of the universe? What are we going to do? He says, you shall know today that Yahuwah Yahuwah is he who is passing over before you as a consuming fire. Have we allowed ABBA Yahuwah to be our consuming fire, to purge everything of our flesh out of us? Because if he doesn't consume everything of our flesh out of us, then that means we will succumb to our evil nature and we will bow down to this system. He does destroy them and subdue them before you, so you shall dispossess them and destroy them quickly, as Yahuwah said to you. So we need to quickly destroy those things in our members of our bodies that still want to succumb to the evil way of our flesh nature. Do not think in your heart after Yahuwah Yahuwah has driven them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness, Yahuwah has brought me in to possess this land. But it is because of the wrong of these nations that Yahuwah is driving them out from before you. So be careful, lest you think you stand, lest you fall. Because it's not your righteousness. It's nothing of yourself. It's only through him and through the power of his Ruach HaKodesh that we can even stand at this point in time. It is not because of your righteousness or your uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land, but because of the wrong of these nations that Yahuwah Yahuwah drives them out from before you, in order to establish the word which Yahuwah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, to Yaakov. And you shall know that Yahuwah Yahuwah is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. So he knows that in our evil nature, we are a stiff-necked people. But yet at the end of the day, because we are willing to bow our knee, because we are willing to allow him to take us through the process that he wants to take us through, we will remember to not forget how you provoked to wrath Yahuwah Yahuwah in the wilderness. From the day that you came out of the land of Mitzrayim until you came to this place, you have rebelled. You have been rebellious against Yahuwah. So we need to understand that within our nature is a rebellious people. But if we choose to bow our knee, if we choose to allow him to take us through the humility, through the brokenness, through the being hard pressed, through going through the affliction of the things that we've got to be put through the tests, then we will get the evil nature out of us, and then he's able to have his way. And so at the end of the day, we look and we see that this is exactly what ABBA Yahuwah has put us through. But he's telling them, because he wants to reveal himself to the nations of the world through us. How are the people going to see him if not through us? They need to see the light. So let's go look at Luke chapter 4. After Yahushua comes out of the wilderness. So in Matthew chapter 4 and in Luke chapter 4 is all about Yahushua having gone through the wilderness. So what is so important as we go through the wilderness? Now look at from verses 14. And Yahushua returned. So in verses 13, when the devil had ended every trial, he went away from him until a convenient time. Until a convenient time, which means that he didn't really leave him alone. So he just left him. But listen to how powerful this is. And Yahushua returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee. So you see, we need to make sure that we go through the fire of the purification. It's not just the baptism of the receiving the Ruach, but it's the baptism of the receiving the Ruach with the fire of the purging that we need to go through, so that we can come out on the other side with the Spirit. And news of him went out through all the surrounding country. and he was teaching in the congregations, being praised by all. So the Father wants us to come forth in the fullness of his Ruach HaKodesh, because we have been filled with his Spirit by water, and we've gone through the water and the fire. Do you understand? Be filled to overflowing. And he came to Nazareth, and where he had been brought up, according to his practice, he went into the congregation on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Yeshayahu was handed to him. And having unrolled the scroll, he found the place where it was written. Now, is this the kind of people that we're going to be? Because if we walk in his footprint, if we will be able to be those this day that are going to be able to understand this Torah portion reading of the consequences of obedience, obedience, there is gain and there is reward in Eikev. And there is the consequences of the obedience to walking in his footprint, and that is going to be, the Spirit of Yahuwah will be upon me. This is what he says. The Spirit of Yahuwah is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to send away crushed ones with a release, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuwah. Wow. Can I read that another way? Can I read this? That the Spirit of Yahuwah is upon you, because he has anointed you to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent you to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to send away crushed ones with the release, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuwah. He's speaking this to you today. If you are willing today to be the one who's going to walk in his statutes, in his ordinances, in his commands, to remember, why is he putting you through this wilderness? If you are going to obey him, if you are going to be faithful to him, if you are going to be able to be faithful and obeying him, when even in the face of destruction, even in the face of difficulty, even in the face of famine, even in the face of death, if you're going to be faithful to him, you are going to raise up in this time to be able to be anointed, to bring good news to the poor. Because there's going to be many that are going to need to hear the good news. That he's going to help you, to be a relief for those brokenhearted, those who are going to go through struggles themselves, because you understand what it's like, you've been through it. And he's going to help you to do that. So in whose footprint do you want to walk in this day? In whose footprint? And so we need to be filled by his Spirit to overflowing. Do not despise the fact that he allows the consuming fire of his Ruach HaKodesh to put us through this wilderness experience, so that we may humble and that we may be proved to become those that he's going to use in the darkest hour to do the greatest work upon the earth. So, if we now just look at Deuteronomy chapter 10, let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20, and it says, Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12, and it says, and now Israel, what is Yahuwah your Lord asking of you? What is ABBA Yahuwah asking of you today? What is he asking of you? But to fear Yahuwah your Lord, to walk in his ways, to love him, to serve Yahuwah your Lord with all your heart and with all your being, to guard his commands, to guard the commands of Yahuwah and his laws, which I command you today for your good. That is what he's asking of us this day. That is what he's asking. Then in Deuteronomy 10 he says, fear Yahuwah your Lord, serve him and cling to him, swear by his name. He is your praise, he is your Eloah, who has done for you these great and awesome deeds which your eyes have seen. How much has Abba done for you, up until now, from the day that you have been saved. Remember all that He has done for you. Remember all that He has done throughout this Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Even if He's done nothing for you in His life, your trust and your faith is in who He is. Not just what He's going to do for you. Your trust and your faith is in who He is. He's the creator of the universe. He's the one that we should fear. He's the one that we should serve. He's the one that we need to cling to. As we need breath in our body, we need Him and we need His Ruach. That's why He says in us, that's why David said in Psalm 51, take not your Ruach from me. That is what we need to pray. Take not your Ruach from Him. Imagine for the people that maybe bow down to this V thing, the Ruach will be taken away from them. Take not your presence from me. Oh yeah. So He says, Deuteronomy 11:1, and you shall love Yahuwah, your Elohah, and guard His charge, even His laws, and His right rulings, and His commands, always. Where did He ever change that always? Where did He change it? Where did Yeshua come and nail it to the cross? Where? He came to walk it out. ABBA Yahuwah spoke these commands. Yeshua became the commands in the flesh. And the Ruach of ABBA Yahuwah helps you to walk it out. How beautiful. How beautiful. So let's just look at Isaiah 49:16 as we start to unfold. We start to look just at the Haftorah. So we go to Isaiah. I just want to read from Isaiah 49 verse 16 where it says, see, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are always before me. My goodness, Yeshua inscribed you on the palms of His hands. When He was hanging at the stake, He was inscribing each and every one of us as He was there at the stake, hanging at the stake. What He has paid the price for us. He has already gone before us. He's walked out the Torah for us. He lived the Torah for us. Now He's given us His Ruach HaKodesh so that we may walk it out. What excuses do we have? So let's look at Isaiah 51 from verses 1. It says, listen to me, you who pursue righteousness, seeking Yahuwah. Look to the rock you were hewn from, and to the hole of the pit you were dug from. Look to Yahuwah. Look to the rock from which you have been carved out of. He has carved your name in that rock. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who bore you, for he was alone when I called him. And I blessed him, and I increased him. For Yahuwah shall comfort Zion. He shall comfort all her waste places. For He makes her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of Yahuwah. Joy and gladness are found in it, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Wow. He's wanting us to be able to understand that our wilderness can be like a garden of Eden. We can have joy and thanksgiving, and we can exalt Him with song and singing and rejoicing. Verse 4, listen to me, my people. Give ear to me, O my nation. For the Torah goes forth from me, and my right ruling I set as a light to peoples. His Torah is a light unto our feet, because that's the footprint that has been given to us for us to follow. It is the light unto our feet. It is the lamp unto our feet. His commands, His ordinances, His statutes, so that we will have it imprinted on the tablets of our hearts, so that we may love Him and obey Him because we love Him. And so we look at 1 John 2 verses 3 to 6. I just want to bring you one scripture from John, my favorite scripture, because there's many that say we have, we know Him. There's many people say, yeah, but I know ABBA Yahuwah. To know Him is to perceive, recognize, become acquainted with Him as a husband and a wife. And that is eternal life. And so he says in 1 John chapter 3, and by this we know that we know Him, if we guard His commands. How can we say that we know Him and yet we don't guard His commands? Because it means that you are not in covenant with Him. It means that you are not in the love relationship with Him. It means that you do not love Him, because He says in John chapter 14, if you love me, you will obey my commands. If you love me, you obey my commands. The one who says, I know Him, and does not guard His commands, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards His word, truly the love of Yahuwah has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in Him. The one who says he stays in Him ought to himself also walk even as He walked. So, praise ABBA Yahuwah. The one who says that they will know Him is the one who will obey His commands. And if they say that they know Him, but they don't obey His commands, then they are a liar, and the truth is not in them. And so, I want to close off with a scripture from 2 Chronicles 16, scripture that the Father gave me this morning. In 2 Chronicles 16, verses 9, it says, For the eyes of Yahuwah diligently search throughout all the earth, to show Himself to be strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect to Him. Wow. For the eyes of Yahuwah diligently search throughout all the earth. So right now, the eyes of Yahuwah is searching throughout all the earth. And He wants to show Himself to be strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect before Him. Now, that word perfect, so He wants to show Himself strong on behalf of whose heart. The heart is the mind, it's the left, the mind, the will, and the emotions. So to see if your heart, your mind, your will, and your emotions is perfect to Him. That word perfect, interesting enough, is the word shalem. So that is H8003, and that is shalem, which means complete, which means safe, which means peaceful, which means whole, which means covenant of mind. Perfect, complete, of keeping covenant relationship. So you see, the person who is perfect before Him, the person whose heart is perfect to Him, the person who is perfect to Him is a person who is keeping covenant relationship with Him in terms of keeping His covenant ways. And therefore, that person will have shalem, will be perfect, which means they will have shalem, which then comes from the root word H7999, which is shalom, and that is to be in a covenant of peace, to be at peace, to live in peace, to be complete, to be sound, to be uninjured, to make safe, to make whole, or good, restored, recompense, and reward, to be safe. So they will be safe in mind, in body. They will prosper. They will have restitution. They will be restored, and they will be rewarded. And that is exactly what he said, the reward, the gain, and the consequence of Eikev. That is what we will have if our hearts are perfect before him, which comes from the word, which is where it's the same way that you write shalom. Shalom can be written shalom, can be written shalem, can be written shalom, can be written shalom. And all of it means to be of covenant of mind, of keeping covenant relationship, to be perfect, to be complete, to be peaceful. It's the covenant of peace. And in Numbers chapter 25, verses 12 to 13, he makes a covenant of peace when he made a covenant of peace with Pinchas, because Pinchas was able to stand for ABBA Yahuwah's righteousness. Are we willing to stand for righteousness in this hour? Are we willing to stand for ABBA Yahuwah's way, for his truth? He will make a covenant of peace with us because we will be his priests. Pinchas is the priesthood, and he will make a covenant with his priesthood, a covenant of peace, where we will be safe, where we will be peaceful, even in the midst of the storm. So, Abba Yahuwah bless you all in the Shabbat. Let us pray. Abba Father, I just want to thank you for your word. I thank you, Father, for a covenant that you make with us, Father. I thank you, my Abba Yahuwah, for the footprint that you have imprinted in our DNA of your name, Yod Hei Vav Hei. And in that name and the footprint that you have imprinted in our hearts is the footprint of your ordinances, of your commands, of your ways, of your statutes. Abba, I pray you help us. Abba, we are on a journey now that we need to be able to come to know you more. We are on a journey now that we ourselves are in our wilderness experience, and we want to ask you, will you help us to be humbled? Will you help us to be proved in this time? Will you humble us? Will you prove us so that we may be able to be those that in these last days are going to be able to stand and be a light, to be able to be a light in a time of great darkness, that we will be those that will shine your glory for all to see who you are. You chose a people of Israel to be able to show yourself strong in the midst of their enemies. Abba, show yourself strong through our lives in the midst of our enemies, that they may see you, that they may turn to you, that they may know you, that they may know you in their inner being, that they may come to know you, and that they will love you, and that we will fear you, that we will love you, that we will walk with you as Noah did and as Enoch did, and that we will be those that will be able to bow our knee only to you in the days ahead, that you help us to stand like Yeshua had to stand against the enemy, that we too will stand because we have his authority and power of the Ruach HaKodesh within us to be able to overcome this evil nature and this evil flesh that would want to demand and command and have its way. But Abba, we choose to be those that will be able to bow our knee to you in this day, to allow you to be able to have your way in us, so that we may truly be your witnesses in this time. In Yeshua's name we pray this. Amen.